Maybe we should get a generator. So we can keep the refrigerators going, and maybe the heat in the winter and the air conditioning in the summer if the power goes out. Magic words, music to my ears. Time to heavy up. Good evening, Kemp Toastmasters. Adding a generator to your home can be done in one of a couple of different ways. You can plug in a few specific things, just basically big extension cords into a generator. But that really doesn't work if you want to be able to run all kinds of different things, not just the refrigerators, but the computer, maybe the heating and the air conditioning, which you can't just plug in, except maybe a window unit. So there are two ways to get a generator to run lots of stuff. One of them is what's called a whole house generator. The whole house generator, you get a very expensive generator and a very expensive hookup that then lets the generator automatically run everything in your house. That is fantastic. I know a bunch of people have them. It's a bit out of my budget. The second way is what's called a generator inlet. A generator inlet is a little box, and it has what looks like a receptacle, much like you would have for your clothes dryer, but instead of holes that you plug pins into a plug into it, instead it has pins, and the plug has the holes, and that's what's called an inlet. And there's some other things involved with an interlock and some other special things that have to be done just right in order to safely connect a generator to run some or all of your house when the power goes out. Well, Toastmasters, there's a problem. My house is old, not super old, but back in the 1950s, we had small panels, and they are not designed to hook up a generator. They're mostly fuses. It's what's called I have what's called a rule of six panel, which is where you have one, or in my case, 3 panels with up to 6 separate pieces that have to be flipped around or pulled out in order to cut the power to the house in an emergency. Well, trying to remember 6 things, and it's 2 or 5 things in my case, 2 in one box, 2 in another box, another in another box. If I ever had a real emergency, I had to cut all the power. That would have been quite a pain. Plus, almost no room to add any more circuits. And these are old fuses. So when a circuit blows, now you have to replace a fuse, not just solve the problem and flip a switch. And in fact, here is the old. You've got fuse panel. The one on the left had several circuits, and the dryer, and originally the oven, until I got the kitchen redone. The middle one had the furnace and the air conditioner and most of the lights and half the stuff in the kitchen. And then the third panel, it's a panel that was added by my favorite electrician, Pat O'Connor, who you will meet soon enough, which had most of the parts of the new and improved kitchen, which is already now 22 years old. It's not so new anymore. So the first step was to call Pat. I said, Pat, I'm ready to heavy up. I want to put in a generator. And we discussed all these little details, and they said, Manasseh, got a problem. It's hard to get stuff. There are supply chain shortages. I'm like, yeah, I heard about that. And so we started to pull things and figure out what stuff he needed. And he's like, well, it's going to take me a month, 2 months, 5 months. I don't know. It's going to take a while. But eventually, he figured out, got all the different parts that we would need, all the key pieces, the panel and the generator inlet and the interlock and the meter pan, all these different things. And then about a month ago, ready to go. So the first thing, which is on the left there, was we had to take out a bunch of wires and things that were powering the Fios and powering the clothes dryer, get that out of the way. In the middle picture, you see where we put in plywood. And by the way, plywood costs a lot more than it did 3 years ago, too, to mount the new panel. And then the next picture there on the right has the new panel all ready to start adding things, but there are no wires in it yet. Everything was still on the old. I had to do this piece by piece so I wouldn't be without power for days on end, as I've heard horror stories some people have. And so bit by bit, over the course of several days, I became an electrician's apprentice of sort. A real electrician's apprentice actually works at it for years. This was just a few days, but it was fun. I'd hand pat tools. Occasionally, I'd help them out moving things around or connecting things. And so you could see on the left there where we're starting to move, bit by bit, move circuits from the old panels to the new panel. In the middle picture, that orange wire is the wire that eventually was pulled through to go outside to the inlet. And then on the right, you have a big cable looping down from the top of the new panel and into the bottom of one of the other panels, which allowed us to shift a whole bunch of circuits that they were powered from one of the old panels. And then finally, we get to finishing up. So on the left, you see when we finally were able to take out all the old panels. And in order to do that, we had to have Pepco came out and they did what's called pulling the meter, where they literally disconnect the meter. It's really very easy to do, but it has to be done by Pepco, so they make sure it's done safely and so they keep track of things, because if you mess with an utility meter, you're in big trouble. Then went ahead and finished getting the last of the circuits into the new panel. And then on the right, you can see where finally everything was connected. The dryer is down on the left, on the FiOS box below that, and everything on the right has gone away except for one box at the top, because we couldn't quite get all of the old cables to reach. We thought we might have a problem with 4 or 5 of them. In the end, all of them stretch the wires around and move things around. And Pat was able, with his magic, to figure out a way to get everything to go except one he has to put a little extension box on. And then finally, there is Pat. I said, Pat, we got to get a picture of you this for Toastmasters. So thank you, Pat. You did a tremendous amount of work. All the lights are on, because I'm not actually at the synagogue right now. I'm at home with all my power on. Tomorrow morning is the inspection. So when the Montgomery County will send somebody out to look at the work and say, yeah, Pat, you did a good job. Or, well, I hope that's what they're going to say. And that's it. And now I'm ready. I used the generator actually for the first time while the meter was pulled yesterday. I used the generator to run the refrigerator, so that way Pat didn't have to rush through his work. And everything is working and I'm all set. Back to you, Toastmaster of the day.